Caleb Rowan raised the rifle to his shoulder and aimed it square at the heavy woman standing on his porch in the dead of a blizzard. His finger settled on the trigger. Snow piled on her shawl like it meant to bury her where she stood. Her lips had gone blue. She didn't move. She didn't cry. She just looked him dead in the eye and said, "Shoot me, cowboy, or feed me. I ain't got the strength for a third option." And for the first time in 3 years, Caleb Rowan's hand started to shake. Before we ride any deeper into this story, do me a kindness and hit that subscribe button. Stay with me all the way to the end and drop a comment telling me what town or city you're listening from tonight. I want to see how far this story travels across this great country of ours. Now pour yourself something warm, settle in, and listen close, because the West ain't forgiving, and neither is grief. The wind howled across the high plains of the Wyoming Territory, pushing snow through every crack in the porch boards of the Rowan Ranch. Caleb kept the rifle level, but his breath was coming faster now, clouding the dark barrel between them. "I said leave, ma'am." "You said a lot of things, cowboy. Ain't none of them been useful." "You deaf?" "No, sir. Just cold." Caleb's jaw locked. "This ain't a charity. I don't keep company. I don't feed strays. Walk back the way you come." "I come from 40 miles back the way I come," she said, and her voice didn't break, didn't plead. It just reported the fact like she was reading weather off a page. "There ain't nothing that way but more of what tried to kill me already." "Then you ought to have stopped in Millerton." "I did. And they told me the same thing you're telling me now, only they used uglier words for it." Caleb stared at her. The snow was coming sideways, and still. She stood straight, a big woman, heavy through the shoulders and waist, her dark frontier dress soaked clean through at the hem, her shawl so laden with snow, it hung off her like a second skin of ice. Her face was plain and honest and absolutely still. A pretty face, he'd have said, if he'd been the sort of man who still noticed pretty. He wasn't. "What's your name?" "Nora Lane." "Where you from, Nora Lane?" "Nowhere you ever heard of." "Nowhere I'm going back to." "That ain't an answer." "It's the only one I got." He lowered the rifle an inch. Not all the way, just enough that it wasn't pointed at her face anymore. "What do you want from me?" "I told you. Shoot me or feed me." "I ain't shooting you." "Then I reckon you already made your choice." She moved toward the door before he could object, and Caleb got his first good look at how bad off she was. She wasn't walking. She was forcing her body through the snow one hard step at a time, the way a horse finishes a race on 3 legs, because it don't know how to quit. When she got past him into the doorway, she had to grip the frame to stay upright, and he heard her breath catch in her chest like something was broken in there. Hey now." "I'm fine." "You ain't fine." "I said I'm fine, cowboy." "Sit down before you fall down." "Can't. If I sit, I won't get up." He reached for her elbow, and she flinched so hard he stepped back. "Don't touch me unless I ask." "I was trying to help." "I ain't asking for help. I'm asking for work." "Work." "That's the word, yes." Caleb lowered the rifle the rest of the way and set it against the wall, though every instinct in him said that was a fool's move, a stranger in his house, a stranger who'd walked 40 miles through snow to die on his porch. 3 years of solitude cracked open like an eggshell, and the quiet he'd built his whole ruined life around came pouring out onto the floor. "Get in the kitchen," he said. "Stove's the only thing that still works right in this house." Obliged. She moved past him, and he watched her go. She walked slow, real slow, but she walked even. She didn't look around, didn't study the broken things, didn't ask questions about the dust or the empty coat hook where a woman's coat used to hang. She just went to the stove, put her hands 6 inches from the iron, and stood there like a statue thawing itself out. "Sarah's chair is by the window," he said before he knew he was going to. "Who's Sarah?" "Ain't your business." "All right." "My wife." "I didn't ask, cowboy." "I know you didn't." He poured coffee into a tin cup and set it on the table without looking at her. When he turned back, she'd lowered herself into the chair by the window, the one nobody had sat in since the winter. Sarah coughed blood into a handkerchief and told him she was sorry. Nora Lane sat in that chair like she had every right in the world, and Caleb Rowan didn't know whether to hate her for it or thank her. "Drink your coffee." "I will." "Drink it now. You look like you're fixin' to pass out." "I ain't." "Drink the coffee, Nora Lane." She drank it. Her hands were shaking so bad the tin rattled against her teeth. She drank it anyway. "What work can you do?" "Anything a body can do on a ranch I can do." "You don't look it." "That's so." "Ma'am, I ain't trying to be cruel. I'm trying to be honest. You're fat. The word you're looking for is fat cowboy. You can say it. Ain't like I been hiding it under a coat." Caleb flushed. "I was gonna say tired." "Liar." "I was." "Liar," she said again, but there was no heat in it. "Ain't a person west of the Mississippi ever looked at me and said tired first. Don't start now. I'd rather a man tell me the truth of what he sees than feed me a lie to spare himself the awkward." "All right. You're a big woman." "I am." "Big women don't tend to last on a ranch." "Reckon you ain't met many." "I've met plenty." "You've met scared ones. Ain't the same thing." Caleb sat down across from her without meaning to. The chair creaked under him. He hadn't sat at this table with another person in 3 years. 3 years this coming March. He could feel the exact shape of the absence like a chair held by a ghost. 2 weeks, he said. "What?" 2 weeks. "You can stay 2 weeks. You earn your keep or you don't. End of 2 weeks, you move on regardless. That's the deal. That's the whole deal, and I ain't negotiating." "Fine." "You sleep in the barn." "Fine." "You don't ask me questions about Sarah. You don't ask me questions about this house. You don't ask me questions about what I do with my evenings or why I do it." "Fine." "You eat what I eat when I eat. You don't cook for me." That one I got to push back on Cowboy. "Excuse me. You said I'm here to earn my keep. A woman who can't cook ain't worth the flour she'd waste. I cook, you eat. That's how it'll be, or you can put me back out in the snow." Caleb looked at her. Her eyes were gray, the kind of gray a storm turns before it breaks, and they did not move off his. "Fine, you cook." "Good. But you sleep in the barn." "I heard you the first time, Cowboy." The storm ran its course that night, and Caleb laid awake in the dark, listening to the wind die down. He could hear his own breathing too loud in the house. He could hear the beams settle. He could not hear her, and that was the strangest thing of all. A second human being somewhere on his property, and not a sound from her. 3 years of silence, and now the silence had a person in it, and he didn't know yet whether that was worse or better. By the time he came downstairs at sunup, the stove was already lit, coffee on, biscuits in the pan. Nora Lane stood at the counter with flour to her elbows, humming something low, some hymn he half recognized, and she didn't turn around when he came in. "You're up early." "You're up late." "I'm up on time." "On your time, maybe." "How'd you get in here?" "I locked that back door." "Cowboy, a child could open that back door with a hairpin." "You ought to fix it." "I'll fix it when I want it fixed." "Suit yourself." She slid a plate in front of him. 3 biscuits, gravy, 2 strips of bacon he didn't know he still had. He stared at it. "You went in my smokehouse." "I did." "I didn't say you could." "You didn't say I couldn't either. And you hired me to cook." "I didn't hire you. I gave you 2 weeks." "Semantics, Cowboy. Eat your food before it gets cold." He ate. God help him, he ate. And it was the first hot breakfast that had come out of Sarah's kitchen in 3 years, and it tasted so much like being alive that Caleb Rowan had to set the fork down halfway through and press his palm flat against his eye, because he would be damned before he cried in front of this woman. "You all right?" "I'm fine." "Liar." "You gonna say that every time I lie?" "Only if you keep doing it." "Eat your breakfast, ma'am." "I already did, Cowboy. Some of us wake up before the sun." She went outside after that, and Caleb watched her from the window, and he almost called her back because surely a woman her size could not possibly. But she was already halfway to the barn, moving steady, carrying a bucket in each hand full of water from the pump, and she didn't stop to rest. Not once, and by the time he'd finished his coffee, she'd watered the 2 horses and the milk cow and was starting on the fence post that had been leaning for 14 months because Caleb had not cared enough to straighten it. He went out there. He had to. He didn't know why. You don't know how to set a fence post. I've set more fence posts than you've had hot suppers, Cowboy. That one's gonna lean again. Not the way I'm setting it. You're using the wrong gravel. I'm using the gravel you got. I got better gravel in the back lot. Then fetch it, Cowboy, instead of standing there supervising a woman who's doing your work for you. Caleb stood there a long second. Then, for the first time in 3 years, he went and fetched the better gravel. They worked in silence most of the morning. She'd ask for a tool and he'd hand it. He'd say, "Hold this," and she'd hold it. Neither of them spoke a word that wasn't necessary, and by noon the fence was truer than it had been since Sarah was alive, and Caleb Rowan hated that he noticed, and hated worse that he cared. You hungry? I could eat. I'll fix something. I said you don't cook. I can fix a sandwich, Nora Lane. Suit yourself. Inside, his hands were shaking again. He didn't know why. He sliced the bread too thick and the meat too thin, and when she came in and saw the plate, she almost laughed, and he saw it almost happen, saw the corner of her mouth lift and catch itself, and then she sat down and ate without a word of complaint. Why'd you come here? You hired me. You came before I hired you. Why here? Your name was on a list. What list? A list of ranchers out this way who'd lost their wives. I was told you might be desperate enough. Caleb set down his sandwich. Who gave you that list? A woman in Millerton. Said she felt sorry for me. Said you were the meanest of the bunch, but you had land and you didn't hit women, and that was more than most. That's a hell of a recommendation. It's the one I got. You been to the others? 4 of them. 2 turned me away at the gate. 1 said yes and then said something I won't repeat at a table, so I left. The 4th was dead in his chair when I got there. Been dead a week, looked like. Jesus. He didn't help me either. Caleb stared at her. How'd you get from that 4th ranch to here? Walked. Through the storm. Started before the storm. Storm caught me about 10 miles out. You walked through a blizzard to get to the meanest rancher on a list. I did. Why? Because I ran out of better ideas, Cowboy, and because I heard you didn't hit women, and because I figured the worst you'd do was put a gun in my face, and Lord knows that wouldn't have been the first gun in my face this month. Something moved in Caleb's chest that he did not recognize. It was not pity. He'd stopped feeling pity about the same time he'd stopped feeling most things. It was something older, something from before Sarah died, something that used to make him get up in the morning and check the fences and talk to the horses like they were friends. He could not name it. He didn't want to. You'll sleep in the house tonight. I'll sleep in the barn. We had a deal. House is warmer. Barn's fine. Nora Lane. Cowboy. Don't. Don't what? Don't start being kind to me. I can handle the gun, and I can handle the cold porch, and I can handle being told to leave. I cannot handle a man being kind to me right now. I'll come apart, and I ain't got time to come apart. I got work to do. He didn't answer. He just nodded one time and went back outside. That afternoon, while Caleb was mending the east fence, a rider came up the long drive. Caleb knew the horse before he knew the man. A big bay gelding with a white blaze and a stride too proud for the animal it belonged to. Wade Tucker, the Tucker boy from the big spread 3 miles south, the family that owned half the water rights in this valley, and most of the men who worked them. Wade reined up and leaned on the saddle horn and grinned the grin he always grinned, the one that meant he'd come to make somebody feel small. Rowan? Tucker. Heard something funny in town this morning? Ain't interested. Heard you took in a woman. Caleb didn't answer. Heard she's a big one too. Real big. Size of a hay bale, the fella said. I didn't believe him. Figured Caleb Rowan would rather die alone than let a woman back in that house. But then I rode by and I seen her out at the fence with my own eyes. Get off my land, Wade. I'm just saying hello, Rowan. Neighborly. You ain't my neighbor. You're the buzzard that lives downriver. Wade laughed. Now that ain't friendly. I come up here out of concern. Man in your state of mind taking in a stray like that, folks are gonna talk. Folks already talk. Don't need your help. She a mail order. Get off my land. Wade's grin widened. His eyes moved past Caleb to the ranch house, to the barn beyond it, to where Nora Lane had come around the corner with a coil of wire over her shoulder, and was standing still now watching the two men. Well, ma'am? Wade called out, tipping his hat. Ain't you a sight? Nora Lane did not answer. She did not move. Aw, she's shy, Rowan. She don't talk. She don't talk to the likes of you. Now don't be like that. I'm just being neighborly. He raised his voice. Ma'am, you need anything from a real ranch, one that still runs proper, you come on down the road. We got plenty of work, plenty of food too. Looks like you appreciate a good meal. Caleb took one step forward, and Nora Lane said very quietly, without moving, without raising her voice above the wind. Cowboy, don't. Caleb stopped. Wade Tucker laughed. Well now, she got you on a short rope already, Rowan. Didn't take her long. He wheeled his horse around. You two have a real nice afternoon. I'll be seeing you. Both of you. He rode off at a canter, snow flying from the hooves, and Caleb stood in the cold with his fists balled so tight his knuckles ached. Nora Lane walked up beside him. She did not look at him. She looked at the disappearing rider. That man, she said, is going to be a problem. I know it. He's the kind that don't stop. I know it. You gonna be all right, Cowboy? I'm fine. Liar. Caleb Rowan looked down at his boots. His hands were still shaking. The wind had stopped, but the shaking had not. 3 years of nothing, and in one single morning a woman he had nearly shot had walked into his kitchen, set a fence he'd let rot, fed him a meal that tasted like his dead wife's ghost, and now a man he'd spent his whole life avoiding had turned his eye toward her and Caleb Rowan, who had not cared about one living thing on this earth since the day they'd put Sarah in the ground, felt something hot and old and dangerous stir back to life in the pit of his chest, and he was afraid of it. He was afraid of it, the way a man is afraid of a horse he used to know how to ride. Come on, he said. We got work. Yes, we do, Cowboy. And Nora Lane. Yeah. Sleep in the house tonight. Barn ain't safe no more. She looked at him a long moment. Her gray eyes went soft for just half a second, then snapped right back to storm. All right, Cowboy. The house it is. And together, not speaking, they walked back toward the ranch that was no longer just one man's tomb, while 3 miles south in a warm parlor full of lamplight and money, Wade Tucker poured himself a glass of whiskey and started thinking about exactly how he was going to break Caleb Rowan apart for good. The house was colder than the barn would have been. Caleb knew it before he opened the door. 3 years of one man's breath could not warm these rooms. He walked in first, and Nora Lane followed behind him with her bundle of belongings, which turned out to be one cloth bag the size of a loaf of bread. That all you got? That's all I got. What's in it? Mine. Fair enough. He stood in the hallway with his hand on the banister and did not go up. She watched him not go up. Cowboy. Yeah. Where am I sleepin'? There's a room at the top of the stairs. Whose room? Don't ask me that. I gotta ask. I ain't sleepin' in a dead woman's bed without being told I can. Caleb's jaw worked. It was Sarah's sewing room. She never slept in it. It's got a cot. That's where you sleep. That's the only room I can give you. All right. You don't go in the other room, the one at the end of the hall. Understood. I mean it, Nora Lane. I said understood, Cowboy. I ain't deaf and I ain't cruel. He nodded once and went to the kitchen, and she went up the stairs, and he heard her footsteps move past his own bedroom door and stop at the sewing room. And then the door closed, and Caleb Rowan put both hands flat on the kitchen table and breathed like a man surfacing from a deep river. He did not sleep that night. He laid in the dark and listened to the house hold a second person for the first time in 3 years, and he could not tell if the sound he kept hearing was her breathing or his own. Morning came hard. She was in the kitchen before him again, and this time she didn't hum. "We got to go to town." "Why?" "You're out of flour. You're out of salt. You're out of coffee. You got 2 eggs left and a 1/4 pound of bacon and a sack of beans that's older than I am. A man can't winter on what you got in that pantry, Cowboy. Not even a man who don't want to. I ain't been to town in 4 months. I can tell. Town don't want me in it. Town don't have to want you, Cowboy. Town has to sell you flour." He stared at her over the rim of his coffee cup. "You comin' with me?" "I am." "You sure? You got somebody else?" "No." "Then I'm comin' with you." Nora Lane. What happens in town today ain't gonna be friendly. "Cowboy, nothing in my life has been friendly since I was 9 years old. I'll survive a general store." "It's gonna be Wade's people." "Then it'll be Wade's people. Hitch the wagon." He hitched the wagon. She climbed up beside him, and the bench creaked hard under both of them, and neither one of them mentioned it. He slapped the reins, and the 2 mares started down the long road toward Millerton, and for the first 2 miles, neither one of them said a word. "Cowboy." "Yeah." "When we get there, you let me do the talking in the store." "Why?" "Because you're about to shoot somebody, and I ain't." "I ain't gonna shoot nobody." "Your face is saying different." "My face has been like this for 3 years." "Then 3 years is long enough. Let me do the talking." "Fine." Millerton was not much of a town, and it knew it. 2 streets crossed at a crooked angle, and the general store sat on the corner like a bad tooth. Caleb tied the wagon and helped Nora down without thinking about it, and she let him, and neither one of them looked at the other when her hand left his. They walked in together. The bell rang above the door. 3 women turned to look. A man at the counter turned to look. The shopkeeper, a narrow man named Pettigrew, turned to look, and all 5 of them did the exact same thing at the exact same time, which was to stop breathing for 1 full second, while their eyes traveled up and down Nora Lane from her bonnet to her boots and back. "Mornin'," Nora said, clear as a bell. Nobody answered. "I said mornin'." "Mornin'," Pettigrew said slow. "We'll need flour 20 pounds, salt 5, coffee 3, sugar 2, lard 10, a sack of oats, and a sack of cornmeal and whatever dried apples you still got from fall." Pettigrew didn't move. He was looking at Caleb. "Rowan." "Pettigrew." "Didn't expect to see you." "I reckon not." "This year, she's my hand." "Your hand." "That's what I said." One of the women laughed. It was a small laugh, the kind of laugh a woman makes behind a handkerchief when she wants you to hear it and pretend you didn't. Nora Lane did not turn her head. She kept her eyes on Pettigrew. "The order, sir." "I heard you." "Then fill it." "Ma'am, I'll need to know who's payin'." "He is." "He got credit." "He's got cash." Caleb reached into his coat and put the money on the counter without a word. Pettigrew looked at it like it was a snake. Then he looked at the women. Then he looked back at Caleb. "Rowan, word is you took her in off the road." "Word travels fast." "Wade Tucker was in here yesterday." "Imagine he was." "He said some things." "Imagine he did." "Said the woman don't have papers." "Said she showed up out of nowhere." "Said nobody knows where she come from." Nora Lane spoke before Caleb could. "Mr. Pettigrew, do you sell flour to folks with papers, or do you sell flour to folks with money?" Pettigrew blinked. "Because the sign outside says General Store, not Courthouse, and I ain't asking you to marry me. I'm asking you to weigh out 20 pounds of flour." The woman behind them laughed again, and this time it was louder, and this time she said loud enough to carry, 20 pounds ought to last her till Tuesday." Caleb turned. Nora's hand caught his wrist before he'd moved a full inch. "Don't." She said, "I heard what she said. I've been hearing what women like her say my whole life. Fill the order, Mr. Pettigrew." Pettigrew filled the order. His hands shook a little. Whether it was fear of Caleb or shame at himself, no one in the room could have said. They were loading the last of it into the wagon when a voice came across the street. "Well, well, well! Caleb didn't have to look. Wade. Rowan. Ma'am. Wade Tucker tipped his hat and walked across the road with his two younger brothers behind him, both of them grinning the Tucker grin. Didn't know you was coming to town today. I'd have baked a pie. Move along, Wade. I'm moving. Just wanted to pay my respects to the lady. He stopped 10 feet off. Ma'am, I was just over at the sheriff's office. Had a real interesting conversation. Nora did not look up from the sack she was loading. Don't you want to know what about? No, sir. About you, ma'am. Now she looked up. That's right. See, I was just telling the sheriff how a woman showed up on Caleb Rowan's land out of thin air and how that woman don't have no papers, no people, no nothing. And the sheriff, he got to thinking. He said to me, Wade, that sounds an awful lot like the woman they're looking for up in Cheyenne. Caleb felt Nora's whole body go still beside him. What woman in Cheyenne, Wade? The one that stole from her employer. Big woman, they said. Real big. Cooked for a family up there. Took off with the silver and the missus's jewelry. Warrants out on her. That ain't her. Ain't it, Rowan? You know where she was before she come to you? Caleb did not answer. He did not know. He had not asked. Wade smiled wider. Thought not. Sheriff said he'd be riding out to your place by the end of the week, just to ask some questions, friendly-like. He tipped his hat again. Ma'am, you have a real fine day now. The Tuckers walked away laughing. Caleb stood beside the wagon and did not move. Nora finished loading the last sack and climbed up onto the bench without his help, and sat there looking straight ahead. Get in the wagon, Cowboy. Nora, get in the wagon. He got in. He did not slap the reins. He sat there. Is it you? No. Nora Lane, is it you? I said no, Cowboy, and I meant no. I ain't never been to Cheyenne. I ain't never stole nothing in my life. That man is lying, and you know he's lying. Then why do you look like that? Because I know how this goes. How what goes? This. A man like him, a woman like me, a sheriff that owes somebody a favor. I know how this goes, Caleb Rowan, because I have seen it go 3 times already in 3 different towns, and every single time I have had to run before the rope came out. Now drive the wagon. He drove the wagon. Neither of them spoke the whole way home, and the silence was not the kind of silence it had been on the way in. It was the kind of silence that meant something was coming, and both of them knew it. They were a quarter mile from the ranch when Caleb pulled up on the reins so hard the mares threw their heads. What? The gate. The front gate of the Rowan Ranch had been pulled off its hinges. The posts were cracked clean through. Not cut, not chopped, yanked. Chain and all thrown into the ditch like a handful of coins. Cowboy. I see it. That happen often. That ain't never happened. He climbed down and walked to the gate and put his hand on the broken post, and Nora watched him from the wagon. He stood there a long time. When he came back, his face was a color she had not seen on it yet. Wade. I know. He done it while we was in town. I know. He's telling me he can reach my land any time he wants. I know, Cowboy. I'm gonna kill him. No, you ain't. Nora. No, you ain't. You listen to me, Caleb Rowan. If you ride down to that Tucker spread tonight with a gun, you will be dead by morning, and I will be in a jail cell by noon, and that is exactly what he wants. That is the whole entire plan. He is pulling on your rope to see how fast you run. Do not run. Then what do I do? You fix the gate. I cook supper. We sleep in that house with a loaded rifle, and we get up tomorrow and we do it again. That ain't a plan. It is a plan, Cowboy. It's the plan where we don't die. Now drive. He drove. They unloaded the wagon in silence. Caleb fixed the gate with new posts from the back lot, and it took him 4 hours, and by the time he was done, the sun was gone and his hands were raw. He came inside and Nora had supper on the table. Stew, bread, coffee. He sat down and he ate 3 bites, and then he put his spoon down. Nora Lane. Yes. I got to ask you something, and I need a straight answer. Ask, who are you running from? She set her own spoon down. My husband. Caleb stared at her. You got a husband. I had a husband. He ain't a husband no more. He's a drunk and a liar and a man who broke my arm in 2 places on a Sunday morning because the biscuits was cold and I left him 11 months ago and I ain't looked back. He alive. Last I heard. He looking for you. I don't know, Cowboy. I never stayed nowhere long enough to find out. Is his name the name you been given, folks? My name is Nora. Lane was my mama's name. I took it back when I left him. He don't know that name. He don't know any of this. And you ain't never been to Cheyenne. Cowboy, I ain't never been north of where we are sittin' right now. Caleb picked up his spoon. He put it back down. Why didn't you tell me? Because you wouldn't have opened the door. I might have. You had a gun in my face, Caleb Rowan. You was a hair breadth from the trigger. If I'd told you I had a husband out there somewhere, you'd have sent me back into the snow, and we both know it. I wouldn't have. Liar. He almost smiled. It almost happened. He caught it before it did. Eat your supper, ma'am. You eat yours. They ate. The fire popped in the stove. Outside, a wind came up and pushed against the shutters, and Caleb thought for one bad second that somebody was climbing the porch, but it was only the wind. He got up anyway and checked the door and loaded the rifle and set it by the kitchen table where he could reach it sitting down. You expectin' company, Cowboy? I'm expectin' Wade. He ain't comin' tonight. How you figure? Because he thinks he already won today. Men like him don't push twice in one day. He's at home with a whiskey right now telling his brothers how he made us shake. He'll come at us again, but not tonight. You seem sure. I have been married to a man like him, Caleb Rowan. I know how he breathes. Caleb looked at her across the table. The lamp made her face soft and old and young all at once, and his chest did the thing it had been doing since yesterday, the hot, old, dangerous thing. Nora? Don't. Don't what? Don't say the thing you're about to say. I ain't ready to hear it, and you ain't ready to say it. Finish your supper, Cowboy. He finished his supper. She cleared the plates. He went to the porch and stood with the rifle across his arms and watched the dark for an hour. And when he came back in, she was already in the sewing room with the door shut and the lamp low. He did not sleep that night either. Near 2 a.m, he heard a horse on the road far off moving slow. He went to the window with the rifle and watched. The horse did not come closer. The rider, whoever he was, turned at the broken place where the gate had been and rode on by. But before he rode on by, he stopped. He stopped for a full minute. And then a small white thing fluttered to the ground at the gatepost, and the horse moved off at a trot and was gone. Caleb waited until the hoofbeats were nothing. He pulled on his coat and his boots, and he walked out to the gate with the rifle in one hand. The white thing was a folded paper pinned to the new post with a horseshoe nail. He pulled it free. He brought it back inside. He laid it on the kitchen table, and he opened it under the lamp. It was a notice. Official paper. County seal at the top. Signed by a judge he had never heard of down in Laramie. The words at the top said, "Notice of claim against property." And underneath it said that the Tucker family, having acquired debts owed by the late Sarah Rowan in the sum of $1,200, was filing formal claim against the Rowan Ranch, and that Caleb Rowan had 30 days to produce payment in full or vacate the premises. Caleb read it twice. Then he read it a third time. His hand was shaking by the third time. Cowboy. He hadn't heard her come down. Go back to bed, Nora. What is that? Go back to bed. She came and stood beside him. She read over his shoulder. She did not touch him. She did not speak for a long time. And then she said very quietly, very even, Sarah didn't owe them $1,200, did she? Sarah didn't owe anybody a nickel. Then it's a lie. It's a lie with a judge's signature on it. Then we find out which judge and we find out what Wade paid him. Nora. Yes. They ain't trying to scare us anymore. No. They're trying to take the ranch. Yes, they are, Cowboy. She put her hand finally on his shoulder. It was a heavy hand, and a warm hand, and it was the first hand that had touched Caleb Rowan in 3 years that was not his own. He did not move. He did not breathe. He closed his eyes, and he stood in his kitchen in the dead middle of a Wyoming winter night with a notice of claim on his table and a woman's hand on his shoulder, and somewhere down the valley, Wade Tucker was asleep in a warm bed with whiskey on his breath and a judge in his pocket. And Caleb Rowan understood for the first time since the day they had put Sarah in the ground that he was going to have to get up and fight for something again, and he did not know yet whether he still remembered how. The notice of claim laid on the kitchen table between them like a dead thing neither one of them wanted to touch. $1,200. I heard you the first time, Cowboy. I ain't got $1,200. I know you ain't. I ain't got $112. I know that too. Sarah never borrowed a penny from anybody in her life. Her daddy raised her better than that. She'd have walked barefoot in January before she took a loan from a Tucker. I believe you. Then why's her name on this paper? Because somebody put it there, Caleb Rowan. That's what this is. That's all this is. A piece of paper with a lie on it and a judge's signature underneath. A judge's signature is the law. A judge's signature is a man's name. Men can be bought. Men can be caught. We just got to figure out which one this judge is. He looked at her across the lamp, and he saw her for what she was. For the first time, not a stranger on his porch. Not a charity case. Not a woman with a ruined past, but a person who had been fighting her whole life and had not yet lost the habit of fighting. It steadied something in him. It scared him worse than the paper did. Nora. Get some sleep, Cowboy. I ain't gonna sleep. Then sit in that chair till sunup. I'm going up. She left him at the table. He sat in the chair till sunup. At first light he saddled the paint and rode into Millerton without breakfast and without a coat buttoned. He left Nora at the house with the rifle and made her promise to shoot first and ask names afterward, and she promised, and he believed her. He did not go to the general store. He went 2 doors down to the office of a man named Henry Doyle, who had been a lawyer in Boston before whiskey brought him west, and who still kept his shingle out because nobody had thought to take it down. Doyle was drunk at 9 in the morning. Caleb had counted on it. Rowan? Well, I'll be damned. Doyle. Heard you was dead. I ain't. Heard you was close. Closer than I want to be. I need a lawyer. Doyle looked at him over his spectacles. I ain't been a lawyer in 6 years, Caleb. You still know the law. I know what it used to be. It'll do. Caleb put the notice on the desk. Doyle picked it up. His eyes moved slow the first time. They moved fast the second time. By the third time, his hands had stopped shaking, and his face had gone sober in a way that whiskey couldn't touch. Who served this on you? Wade Tucker by way of a horseshoe nail on my gatepost. This ain't served. This is pinned. Meanin' it ain't legal yet. A claim of this size has to be served in person by the county sheriff or a deputy. Pinned to a post ain't service. This is a threat dressed up in a judge's clothes. So it's worthless. I didn't say worthless. I said it ain't served yet. The judge is real. The seal is real. Somebody's gonna ride out to your place with a deputy inside of 30 days and make it real. You got till then to make it go away. How do I make it go away? You don't. Not by yourself. You gotta prove Sarah never signed a note for $1,200. Which means you gotta find the note they're claiming she signed. There ain't no note. There's gotta be. Judges don't sign paper on thin air. Somebody somewhere forged a note in Sarah's name. Find the note. Prove the forgery, the claim collapses. Don't find the note, you lose the ranch. Where do I start? Cheyenne. The judge is in Laramie, but the Tucker's Bank in Cheyenne, that's where the note'll be if it's anywhere. That's a 3-day ride. 3 days there, 3 days back. And while you're gone, Caleb, your lady friend, is sitting on that ranch by herself with Wade Tucker 3 miles south. Caleb did not answer. Doyle poured himself another drink. There's another way. Tell it. You find dirt on Wade. What dirt? Any dirt. Tuckers are a proud family. Old man Tucker's got his eye on the governorship next spring. You get one real piece of dirt on Wade, and that old man'll drop this claim himself before sundown to keep the family name clean. Dirt like what? Like anything, Caleb. A Tucker's always got something. You just gotta be willing to look. Caleb rode home hard. He did not stop at the general store. He did not stop at the sheriff's office. He rode into his own yard at noon, and Nora was on the porch with the rifle across her lap and a pot of coffee beside her. You still breathin', Cowboy? Still breathin'. You find out anything? 2 things. 1, the paper ain't legal yet. 2, we got 30 days or we find something on Wade Tucker big enough to make his daddy call the dogs off. Then we find something on Wade Tucker. That's what I said. Where do we start? I don't know. I do. He stopped with his hand on the porch rail. You do. Cowboy, I was in that general store yesterday, same as you. And I watched 3 women look at me like I was a 2-headed calf. And one of them women, the one that laughed, she had a girl with her. Couldn't have been more than 14. And that girl did not laugh. That girl looked at the floor. And when Wade Tucker come into that store, that girl went white as the flower on the counter and stepped behind her mama. Nora, I know what I saw, Caleb Rowan. I have been that girl. I know the face that girl was making. Who was the woman? I don't know her name. Pettigrew would. Then we ask Pettigrew. Pettigrew won't talk to me. He'll talk to me. Nora. He'll talk to me, Cowboy. Women talk to women about girls. It's the one thing in this whole rotten country that still works the way it's supposed to. He looked at her a long moment. All right. They went back to Millerton that afternoon, both of them this time, and Nora walked into the general store alone, while Caleb waited in the wagon with the rifle under a blanket on the bench beside him. She was in there 22 minutes. He counted every one. She came out slow. She climbed up slow. She did not look at him until the wagon was out of town. Her name is Mary Beth Hollis. The girl, she's 13 years old. Her mama's the one that laughed. Her daddy died 2 years ago of the fever. Her mama cleans houses for money. One of the houses she cleans is the Tucker house. Jesus. Mary Beth goes with her mama on cleanin' days. Has been for a year and a half. Jesus Christ. Pettigrew's wife says there's been talk. Quiet talk. The kind of talk women do when they're hoping somebody else will do something about it first. Mary Beth has been comin' home from the Tucker house cryin'. Won't say why. Won't say nothin'. Mama Hollis needs the money so bad she sends the girl anyway. That son of a bitch. Cowboy. Cowboy, look at me. I'm lookin'. We ain't tellin' nobody about this yet. The hell we ain't. I'm writin' to the sheriff right now. The sheriff is in Wade's pocket. Wade told you so himself yesterday. You ride to that sheriff, that girl gets called a liar, her mama gets run out of town, and Wade walks. You understand me? Then what? Then we do this right. We go to Cheyenne. Together. We find that note, and we prove it's forged. And while we're in Cheyenne, we find a United States Marshal, or we find a newspaper man, or we find somebody that ain't in Wade Tucker's pocket, and we tell them what's happening to Mary Beth Hollis. And we let the truth take Wade down the way the truth takes men like him down, slow, and all the way. That's a lot of days. That's all the days we got, Cowboy. We can't both leave the ranch. We can and we will. Because if you go alone, I'm dead when you come back. And if I go alone, nobody listens to me. And if we stay, we lose the ranch in 30 days. We go, both of us, tomorrow at dawn. He did not argue. He had not been argued out of anything in 3 years. She had done it 4 times in 2 days. They packed that night. Caleb wrote a letter to old Tom Brewster, who had the spread to the north, and who had been Sarah's uncle by marriage, and who had not spoken to Caleb since the funeral, because Caleb had not let him. The letter said only that Caleb was leaving for a week, that there was trouble with the Tuckers, and that if Tom had any kindness left in him for Sarah's sake, he would ride by the ranch once a day and make sure nothing was burning. He rode out to Tom's at dusk to put the letter in the old man's hand. Tom read it on the porch and did not invite Caleb in, and did not offer a drink, but when he was done reading, he folded the paper once and put it in his coat pocket and said, "I'll ride by twice a day, not once. Go do what you got to do, son, and come back alive for her sake." It was the first time in 3 years anyone had called him son. He rode home in the dark, and Nora had supper waiting, and neither one of them could eat it. They sat at the table and pushed the food around, and finally Nora said, "Cowboy, tell me about Sarah." "No? Tell me one thing, just one. Not to hurt you, so I know who I'm fighting for." Caleb looked at his plate a long time. She laughed like a bell. That's what I remember most. She had a laugh that went up at the end like a question. Like she was surprised every single time something was funny. That's a fine thing to remember. It's the only thing I let myself remember. I got rid of the rest. You can't get rid of the rest, Cowboy. You just stuck it in a room and shut the door. Yeah. Well, door's been shut 3 years. Don't plan on opening it. Fair enough. She took his plate and her plate and scraped them into the slop bucket and stood at the sink with her back to him. Nora Lane. Yeah. Thank you. She did not turn around. For what? For not asking me to open the door. Now she turned. Her gray eyes were wet, but they were steady, and she did not wipe them. I ain't never gonna ask you to open that door, Caleb Rowan. That's your door. I got one of my own, and it's just as shut as yours. We'll leave each other's doors alone. That's a promise. He nodded. He could not speak. They went to bed. He heard her footsteps go past his door this time and stop for 1 second longer than they needed to, and then go on to the sewing room, and he laid in the dark with his hand over his eyes and did not cry, because he did not remember how anymore. But something in his chest was leaking anyway, and he did not know what to do about it. So he did nothing. The scream came at 3:15. It was Nora. Caleb was on his feet with the rifle before he was fully awake, and he threw open the sewing room door to find her standing at the window in her nightdress, her hand clapped over her mouth, and she was pointing. The barn was on fire. "Oh God, Cowboy, the horses. Stay in the house." The horses, Caleb. Stay in the damn house. He ran. He did not put on boots. He did not put on a coat. He ran across the yard in his stockings with the rifle in one hand and the barn door 10 feet away, and already the smoke was pouring black and thick out of the loft. He got the door open, and a wall of heat hit him, and he went in anyway, because those 2 mares and that milk cow had not done anything to anybody, and they were screaming in their stalls the way animals scream when they know. He got the first mare out. He got the second mare out. He went back in for the cow, and the loft cracked above him, and a beam came down and caught him across the shoulder and drove him to one knee, and through the smoke he saw boots. 2 pairs. Standing in the doorway he had just run through. "Well now, Rowan." "Wade, you had yourself a little fire." Caleb tried to raise the rifle. His shoulder would not lift. "I wouldn't, Rowan. I truly wouldn't. Wade, I come to offer you a deal. Real generous. You sign the ranch over to my daddy tonight right here, and I let you and the fat girl walk out with your lives. Don't sign and this whole place goes up and you go with it, and folks'll say it was a tragedy, a lonely man and his hired woman, and nobody will look any closer than that. Go to hell. Rowan, be reasonable. Go to hell, Wade." Wade took a step closer. Behind him, his younger brother held a lantern and grinned the Tucker grin. "Have it your way then." A shot rang out from the doorway, not from Caleb's rifle. Caleb's rifle was still on the ground. The shot came from behind Wade, from outside the barn, from the porch of the house. The lantern in the younger brother's hand exploded into a shower of glass and oil and fire, and the younger brother screamed and dropped to his knees, slapping at his burning sleeve. And Wade spun around, and his gun came halfway up before the second shot hit the doorframe 2 inches from his head. "The next one goes in your face, Wade Tucker." Nora Lane, bare feet, nightdress, rifle steady at her shoulder on the porch rail. "Back off my porch, and off my barn, and off my land, or I swear to the God my mama raised me on, I will put you in the ground where you belong." "Ma'am," I said, "back off." Wade backed off. The younger brother crawled after him, still smoking. They got on their horses, and they rode, and they did not look back. Caleb got to his feet and got the cow out of the barn, and by then the barn was past saving. He stood in the yard in his stockings with his shoulder going numb and watched his barn burn to the ground. And Nora Lane came down off the porch with a blanket and put it around him and did not say a word. The barn fell in at 4:30 in the morning. The horses were all right. The cow was all right. Caleb's shoulder was broken in 2 places, and he did not know it yet. He sat on the porch step with the blanket around him, and Nora sat beside him, and they watched the last of the timbers glow orange in the dark. "Cowboy." "Yeah." "We ain't going to Cheyenne." "No." "We're going further than Cheyenne." "Yeah." "We are going to end that man." "Yeah, we are, Nora Lane." And somewhere in the dark miles away, Wade Tucker rode hard for his daddy's house with a burned brother behind him and a woman's rifle shot still ringing in his ears. And for the first time in his worthless life, Wade Tucker understood that he had picked a fight with 2 people who had already lost everything, and that there is nothing on this green earth more dangerous than 2 people who have nothing left to lose. Dawn came gray and wet over the burnt bones of the barn, and Caleb Rowan was still sitting on the porch step with the blanket around him and his right arm hanging at an angle a right arm was not supposed to hang at. "Cowboy." "Yeah." "Your shoulder's broke." "I know it." "You knew it an hour ago." "Yeah." "And you didn't say nothin'." "Weren't nothin' to say." Nora got up without another word and went in the house. She came back out with a bottle of whiskey, a strip of clean muslin, and Sarah's old sewing scissors. She set them on the porch step. "Drink. Nora, drink, Cowboy. I'm setting that shoulder before we move another inch, and you're gonna want to be drunk when I do it." "You know how to set a shoulder." "My mama was a midwife, and my daddy was a drunk who fell off things. I have set more shoulders than most doctors west of St. Louis. Now drink." He drank. She waited till he was 3 long pulls in, and then she took his wrist in one hand and his elbow in the other, and she put her knee in his side, and she pulled steady and hard, and even, and Caleb Rowan made a sound no man wants to make in front of a woman, and then the bone slid back into the socket with a wet thump, and the whole right side of him went loose. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. That's the one. Where'd you learn to do that?" "I told you, drunk daddy. Now hold still, I'm binding it." She bound it tight against his chest with the muslin and tied it off under his arm, and when she was done, she sat back on her heels and wiped her hands on her nightdress and looked him dead in the eye. "We ain't going to Cheyenne with you like this." "I can ride." "You can ride to the outhouse, maybe. You ain't riding 3 days to Cheyenne with a green shoulder." "Then what?" "Then we change the plan." "Nora, we changed the plan, Cowboy. Cheyenne was for finding the note. We don't have time for the note no more. Wade tried to burn us alive last night. He ain't waiting 30 days, and neither are we. We go at him today. Here." "With what?" "With what we already got. Mary Beth Hollis." "Mary Beth Hollis." "Nora, that girl's 13 years old." "I know how old she is." "You want to drag a 13-year-old into a fight with a Tucker. I want to give that 13-year-old a chance to sleep at night for the rest of her life, Cowboy, which is more than anybody in this valley has done for her so far. And I ain't dragging her. I am going to her mama, one woman to another, and I am telling that mama what I know, and I am asking her what she wants to do. That is all. The rest is her call. And if the mama says no, then we find another way. But she ain't gonna say no." "How do you know?" "Because, Caleb Rowan, I have been looking into that woman's face for 2 days in my head, and I know a mama who has been praying for permission. She just needs somebody to hand it to her." He could not argue with her. He had stopped trying. All right. You stay here. Tom Brewster's coming by this morning like you asked. You tell him what happened. You tell him everything. You ask him for men, not 10 men. 3. Men who will stand on this porch with a rifle between now and sundown in case Wade comes back to finish. 3 honest men, Cowboy. You know 3 honest men. I know 2. Find the 3rd. Where are you going?" To see Mrs. Hollis. Alone. Alone. She won't talk if you're there. She won't talk if any man's there. Take the paint. I'll take the paint. Take the rifle. I'll take your pistol. Rifle's too big for me to ride with. Nora. Cowboy. Come back. She paused at the top step. I intend to. She rode out at 7:30 with Caleb's pistol in her belt and Caleb's heart somewhere in the vicinity of his throat. And Caleb Rowan sat on the porch, one armed with the rifle across his knees, and waited for old Tom Brewster to come up the road. Tom came at 8. He took one look at the burnt barn and one look at Caleb's bound arm, and he did not ask a single question. He just got down off his horse, tied it to the rail, walked up the steps, and said, "Who do we kill?" "Nobody yet, Tom. But we might need to before the day's out." "Tell it." Caleb told it. All of it. The woman on the porch in the blizzard. The gate off its hinges. The notice of claim. The girl behind her mama's skirt in the general store. The barn. The shot from Nora's rifle that had saved his life 3 hours ago. Tom Brewster listened without moving. When Caleb was done, Tom took off his hat and held it in his hands and looked out across the yard for a long time. "Son?" "Yeah." "That woman loves you." "Tom, I ain't finished. That woman loves you, and you love her back, and neither one of you has said it yet because you're both too broke to spell the word. I'm an old man, Caleb. I don't miss these things no more. I missed 'em when I was young. I don't miss 'em now." "Tom, I cannot." "I ain't asking you to. I'm telling you what I see. Now. You said you need 3 men. I need 3 men. You got 'em. Me. My boy Henry. And Pete Marston from over the ridge who owes me a favor older than dirt. We'll be on this porch by noon, all 3 of us with rifles and food for 2 days. You got my word." "Tom. Don't. Tom, I ain't deserved this from you. Not after—" "Son, shut up. Sarah was my brother's girl, and I loved her like my own, and I buried her same as you did. And when you wouldn't come out of that house, I let you be, because I thought grief was a thing a man worked through private. I was wrong. I was wrong for 3 years. I'm fixin' to not be wrong no more. Now where's your coffee?" Caleb could not answer him for a full minute. When he could, he said kitchen. "Good, I'll make us some." Tom Brewster made coffee in Caleb Rowan's kitchen, while Caleb Rowan sat on his own porch with his broken shoulder, and tried to remember when the last time was that somebody else had made coffee in that kitchen for him. He could not remember. The answer was Sarah, and he could not let himself say the name. Nora came riding up the long drive at 10:15. Alone. Caleb saw her a mile out and was on his feet at the rail before she was halfway up. Tom stood beside him. Neither man spoke. She pulled up in the yard and got down slow, and her face was set the way a face sets when a person has just asked another person for the hardest thing there is to ask. "Well," she said, "yes." "Thank God." "Don't thank him yet, Cowboy. She said yes, but she said something else too." "What?" "She said it ain't just Mary Beth." Tom Brewster made a sound in his throat. "There's another girl, Susanna Price, 12 years old. Lives with her grandmother because her mama died and her daddy drinks. Her grandmother sends her to do laundry at the Tucker house on Saturdays. Been doing it 9 months. 2 months ago, Susanna stopped speaking. Not a word since. Not to her grandmother, not to the school teacher, not to anybody. Mrs. Hollis went to visit that grandmother last week because she had her suspicions, and the grandmother broke down in the kitchen and told her what she already knew." Jesus. "2 girls, Cowboy. 2 that we know of. There will be more." Tom Brewster put his hat back on. His hands were shaking with the kind of old man rage that does not pass. "I will ride to Laramie myself, today. I know the federal marshal there. He was a friend of my brother's. Wade Tucker can buy a county judge. He cannot buy a federal marshal. Not this one. He's a Methodist, and he has 3 daughters. Tom, you got to rest the horse. I will ride. Henry can come here with Pete. You 2 will have 2 guns on this porch by sundown and a marshal on the road by morning. It is the best I can do, son, and it is what I will do." "Tom?" "What?" "Thank you." The old man mounted up without answering. He rode north for Laramie at a hard trot and did not look back. By noon, Henry Brewster and Pete Marston were on the porch with rifles across their laps and enough jerky and biscuits for 2 days. Henry was 26 and quiet. Pete was 50 and not quiet at all. They sat on the porch and they did not ask questions. Inside, Nora was cleaning Caleb's rifle one-handed because the other hand was holding a cup of coffee for him since he could not hold it himself. "Drink, Cowboy." "I can hold my own cup, Nora." "You cannot, and we both know it. Drink." He drank. She watched him drink. When he was done, she set the cup down and she said without looking at him, "Tom said something to you this morning." "Heard him, did you?" "I heard his voice, not his words." "Then leave it alone." "I intend to. I just want you to know that whatever he said, I didn't hear it, and you don't owe me any kind of answer about it. Not today, not any day." "Nora." "Don't, Cowboy." "I ain't saying anything. I'm asking you something." "Ask." "Your husband." She went still. "Yeah." "Is he gonna come?" "I don't know." "Truth." "Cowboy, I am telling you the truth. I do not know. I have not heard his name in 11 months. I have not written to a soul that could tell him where I am. I covered my tracks the way a woman covers her tracks when her life depends on it. But men like him find ways. Men like him have brothers and cousins and drinking friends. If he is looking, he will find me eventually. If he is not looking, he will not. I do not know which it is. I have not let myself think about it in 11 months, because if I let myself think about it, I cannot breathe. What's his name?" "No." "Nora." "No, Caleb Rowan. You do not get his name. Not today. Because if you had his name today with your shoulder broke and Wade Tucker coming back tonight, you would be thinking about the wrong man. I will give you his name when it is time for his name. It is not time." "Fair. Thank you." "Nora." "Yeah." "If he comes here." "If he comes here, I will handle him." "No, you won't. We will." She looked up at him. Then finally, and her gray eyes went wet for the second time in 2 days, and this time she did not hide it, and she did not blink it away. "All right, Cowboy. We will." The afternoon was long, and the afternoon was quiet. Too quiet. Pete Marston said so 3 times. Henry Brewster said nothing. Caleb sat in the rocker with the rifle across his lap and watched the road south and waited for Wade Tucker to come. Wade did not come. The sun went down, and Wade did not come. The moon came up, and Wade did not come. By midnight, Pete was asleep in the rocker, and Henry was awake on the porch rail, and Nora was in the kitchen making coffee for the 3rd time. And Caleb was standing at the south window with the rifle in his one good hand, and a feeling in his gut that was worse than fear. "Nora." "Yeah." "He ain't coming." "I know." "He's doing something else." "I know." "What?" "I don't know, Cowboy, but I know that man ain't a waiter. He's a mover, and if he ain't here, he's somewhere worse." The knock on the door came at 12:42 in the morning. Not a pounding. A knock. Quiet. Polite. Every person on the porch and in the house went for a rifle. Henry moved first to the side of the door, his barrel up. Caleb stood with his back to the wall on the other side. Pete came awake in the rocker with his gun already in his lap. Nora stood in the kitchen doorway with Caleb's pistol steady in both hands. "Who's there?" "Mrs. Hollis, Mr. Rowan." Nora's breath came out in a rush. "Let her in, Cowboy." Caleb opened the door, one-armed with his rifle pointed at the floor. And Mrs. Hollis stepped in with Mary Beth behind her and Susanna Price behind Mary Beth. And the 3 of them stood in the front room of the Rowan Ranch in the dead middle of the night, and Mrs. Hollis's face was the color of milk that is turned. "Ma'am?" "Mr. Rowan, I am sorry to come like this. I had nowhere else." "You got plenty of places, ma'am. Come in. Sit down." "Wade Tucker came to my house an hour ago." Nora put the pistol down and crossed the room. Mrs. Hollis was shaking so hard her teeth were knocking together. "He came to your house. He came to my house, Miss Lane. He knocked on my door at 11 at night. He had a bottle in one hand and a roll of money in the other, and he said he heard I had been asking questions around town. He said it would be a real shame if my little girl was to come to any harm. He said it just like that in those words with my Mary Beth standing right behind me in her nightdress. And then he put the money on my kitchen table, and he said it would be a real shame, and he walked out. Oh, Mrs. Hollis. I packed a bag. I walked to the Prices, and I told that grandmother what he had said. And she packed Susanna, and we walked here because Miss Lane told me this morning if anything happened, I should come here. So I came here. You did right. I did not know where else. You did right, ma'am. You did exactly right. Caleb stepped forward. Mrs. Hollis, you and the girls are safe in this house tonight. I give you my word on that. Pete, you take the two girls up to the sewing room, and you do not leave that door. Henry, you ride for Laramie at first light. You find your daddy, and you tell him we got the witnesses, and we got a threat made in front of a mother, and you bring that marshal back here on a hard horse. Nora, you sit with Mrs. Hollis. I will take the porch. Cowboy your shoulder. I will take the porch, Nora Lane. I can fire a rifle left-handed. I have done it before, and I will do it again tonight. She looked at him a long moment. All right. He walked out onto the porch with the rifle in his left hand and a broken shoulder on his right, and a house full of women and children behind him that were not his, and he stood at the rail and he looked south into the dark, where Wade Tucker was sitting somewhere in a warm room with a whiskey and a smile, and Caleb Rowan felt the old dangerous hot thing come all the way up into his throat for the first time in 3 years, and he welcomed it. And in his warm room, 3 miles south, Wade Tucker poured himself one last glass and stood at his own window and looked north toward the Rowan Ranch, and he smiled, because Wade Tucker did not yet know that by sundown tomorrow, a federal marshal would be sitting in Caleb Rowan's kitchen, and 2 little girls would be telling that marshal things that could not be unheard, and the whole rotten empire the Tucker family had built on money and fear and silence would have one last sunrise before the world came for it. The night did not end. It only got quieter. Caleb Rowan stood on the porch with his rifle in his left hand until the sky to the east went the color of watered whiskey, and then Henry Brewster rode out for Laramie at a hard gallop, and then the rooster in the burnt barn lot gave up one stubborn crow like he had forgotten the barn was gone, and then the sun came up over the Rowan Ranch on a day that was going to change everything. Nora Lane came out onto the porch at 6 with coffee in both hands. She set one cup on the rail next to his rifle. Drink, Cowboy. I've been drinking coffee for 30 years, Nora. I can remember without being told. Drink it anyway. He drank it. The girls sleep. Mary Beth did. Susanna sat up against the wall with her arms around her knees till about 4, and then she laid down and closed her eyes. I don't know if she slept. I don't think that child has slept in 2 months. She'll sleep again. She will. I mean it, Nora. She will sleep again. So will the other one. I will see to that. I know you will, Caleb Rowan. They stood there. The coffee was hot, and the morning was cold, and neither of them said the thing that was sitting between them on the porch rail. Tom Brewster's words from the day before. Caleb did not bring them up. Nora did not bring them up. They stood there until the sun was all the way over the hill, and then Pete Marston came out with his rifle and took the porch, and Caleb and Nora went inside to feed the women and the children. The federal marshal from Laramie rode into the yard at 4 minutes past 11 in the morning, and he did not come alone. He came with Tom Brewster, and with Henry Brewster, and with 2 deputies, and with a young newspaper man from the Laramie Daily Sentinel who had been waiting at the marshal's office when Tom had walked in the night before, and who had walked back out with them at 4 in the morning without asking permission from anyone. The marshal's name was Josiah Kane. He was a tall man and a tired man, and when he took off his hat in Caleb's front room, he actually bowed to Mrs. Hollis and to the grandmother Price, who had come in with Susanna, and he said, Ma'am, I am at your service. I will hear what the girls have to tell me, if they can tell it, and if they cannot tell it today, I will come back tomorrow and every day after that until they can. We are in no hurry, and we are not leaving. Mary Beth Hollis talked to the marshal for an hour and a half. She talked in Nora's lap with her face pressed into Nora's shoulder because she could not look at a man while she said the words. Nora held her and did not speak and did not cry and did not move. Susanna Price did not talk that day. She took the marshal's hand when he held it out to her, and she squeezed it one time, which the marshal said later was the bravest thing he had ever seen a 12-year-old child do, and then she went back to her grandmother and was quiet. The newspaper man wrote everything down. At 2 in the afternoon, Marshal Kane stood up from Caleb's kitchen table and put on his hat and said, "Rowan, I will be riding to the Tucker place now. I will be taking Wade Tucker into federal custody on multiple counts, and I will be taking his father in for questioning on suspicion of conspiracy and obstruction. I expect resistance. I am asking you to stay here with the women. My deputies and Mr. Brewster's son will ride with me." "I want to come." "I know you do. I am telling you no. You have a broken shoulder, and you have a house full of witnesses that need a rifle on the porch. You will stay here, Mr. Rowan, and you will keep those 2 little girls safe. That is the job. The other job is mine." "Marshal?" "Yes." "Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Mr. Rowan. Thank me when the verdict comes in. Thank your woman for walking to that mother's kitchen. Thank that mother for not selling her child for Wade Tucker's money. There is plenty of thanks to go around today, and very little of it belongs to me." He rode out with 4 men at his back. Henry Brewster rode with them. Tom Brewster stayed on Caleb's porch with his hat in his hands and his eyes on the south road. He did not speak for an hour. When he finally spoke, he said, "Son, yeah, you and that woman are going to lose the ranch. I know. Claim's still on paper. Wade going to jail won't take the claim off. His daddy's going to be in custody by sundown, but the note's in a bank in Cheyenne, and the judge is in Laramie, and neither one of them cares about a little girl in a kitchen. The law is 2 laws, Caleb. The law that puts Wade in a cell is a different law than the law that takes your land." "I know, Tom. I got an offer." "I ain't taking your money, Tom." "I ain't offering money. I am offering a partnership. Hear me out before you throw it back at me." Caleb listened. Tom Brewster spoke for 10 minutes. When he was done, Caleb was quiet for a long time, and then he said, "I'll have to ask her." "I'd have thought less of you if you hadn't." Caleb found Nora in the kitchen. She was braiding Mary Beth's hair because the girl had asked her to. When the braid was finished, Nora kissed the top of the child's head and sent her back to her mother, and then she came out onto the back step with Caleb. And Caleb told her what Tom Brewster had offered. Tom Brewster would buy the Rowan Ranch. He would pay the $1,200 to clear the Tucker claim. He would put the deed in a trust. Caleb and Nora would run the ranch as partners for as long as they wanted to run it. Half the profits would go to Tom. The other half would be theirs. When Tom died, which he said would be sooner than later, the deed would pass to Caleb and Nora, both named together, and it would be theirs free and clear, and the Rowan Ranch would stay. A Rowan Ranch, because Sarah had been a Rowan by marriage, and Nora, Tom said, would be a Rowan by marriage too. If Caleb ever got up the nerve to ask her which, Tom said he had better do soon, because Tom was old and wanted to see it before he died. Nora listened to all of it without moving. When Caleb was done, she said, "Tom Brewster said all that." "He said all that." "Including the last part." "Including the last part." Cowboy. Nora Lane. "I want you to understand something." "I'm listening." "I did not walk 40 miles through a blizzard to your porch looking for a husband. I walked there looking for a job and a roof. I want that to be clear between us for the rest of our lives. It's clear. And I did not stay in this house because a man pointed a gun at me and then gave me a kitchen. I stayed because I saw something in that man that was worth staying for. That is a different thing than what most women call love, Cowboy, and I need you to know that too." "I know it, and I will not be asked because Tom Brewster said to ask. I will not be asked because you are afraid of losing the ranch. I will not be asked because I held a little girl while she cried, and you watched me do it, and something moved in you. Those are all true things, and they are also not enough. If you ask me, Caleb Rowan, you ask me because you cannot imagine waking up one more morning in a house that does not have me in it. That is the only reason I will say yes to. Any other reason I will turn you down, and we will still run this ranch, and we will still be what we are, and that will be enough for me. Do you hear me? I hear you, Nora Lane. Good. Now don't ask me today. Today is not the day. Ask me when you're ready. I will be here. All right. All right. They went back inside. Tom Brewster was asleep in Caleb's rocker. Caleb did not wake him up. Marshal Kane came back at 6 in the evening with Wade Tucker in irons, and with Wade's father in irons beside him, and with Wade's 2 brothers tied belly down across a single horse because they had made the poor choice of drawing their pistols when the marshal had ridden into the Tucker yard. Nobody had been killed. The younger brother with the burned arm had cried, the newspaperman wrote later, like a child who had been caught stealing pie. Wade saw Caleb on the porch as the column rode by on the south road headed for Laramie. Wade turned his face in his saddle, and he looked at Caleb, and his mouth moved, but no sound came out that carried that far. And Caleb Rowan did not care what Wade Tucker's mouth was saying, because Wade Tucker's mouth was never going to matter again to anybody. The trial came in the spring. It lasted 4 days. Mary Beth Hollis spoke for 47 minutes from the witness stand with her mother's hand in hers, and when she was done, the courtroom was silent for a full minute, and then an old woman in the third row started to cry, and then it spread. Susanna Price spoke too. She had gotten her voice back in February, slow and quiet, and by April she could say what she needed to say, and she said it. The young newspaperman from the Laramie Sentinel had been printing the story in weekly installments since January, and by the time the jury went out there was not a town in the Wyoming Territory that did not know the name Wade Tucker and did not know what he had done. Wade got 25 years in the federal penitentiary at Leavenworth. His father got 12. His brothers got 5 apiece. The Tucker Ranch was broken up and sold at auction to pay legal costs, and the water rights in the valley went back to the county and were redistributed among the small ranchers, of which Caleb Rowan was now officially and on paper one. The notice of claim went into a stove in the Laramie courthouse on the day of sentencing. Marshal Kane himself opened the stove door and pushed the paper in and watched it burn. Tom Brewster bought the ranch the way he had said he would. He paid the county clerk in cash. He put the deed in a trust the way he had said he would. He rode up to Caleb's porch a week later with the papers, and he put them on the kitchen table, and he said, "It's done, son. You work it. You keep what you work for. Half to me while I'm breathing, the rest is yours and hers when I ain't." Tom, don't. I'm old and I'm tired and my wife is buried and my son is a good man and does not need my money. You need this ranch. She needs this ranch. I was never going to do anything else with it. Sarah would have wanted it this way, and Sarah's opinion is the only one in this room I still care about. Now pour me a whiskey. Caleb poured him a whiskey. The summer came on. The burnt barn came down and a new barn went up, and Nora Lane, who was big and slow and precise, carried more lumber in one afternoon than Henry Brewster carried in 2. Mrs. Hollis and Mary Beth moved into the ranch hand's cabin at the back of the property, because Mrs. Hollis had lost her cleaning work when the Tuckers fell, and because Nora would not hear of her being anywhere else. Mrs. Hollis cooked. Mary Beth tended the kitchen garden that Nora started on the south side of the house, and by August, that garden was feeding the ranch and selling at market in Millerton, and by September, the garden was making more money than the cattle were. Susanna Price came to visit on Sundays with her grandmother. She started speaking full sentences in July. By October, she laughed one time at something Pete Marston said, and Pete Marston went home and wept in his barn, because he had not thought that child would laugh again in this world. Caleb Rowan healed. His shoulder healed. His hands, which had shaken for 3 years, stopped shaking. He started eating at the table instead of at the counter. He started sleeping through the night. He started God Help Him whistling sometimes when he rode the fences, and the first time Nora heard it, she pretended she had not because she did not want to stop him. He asked her on a Tuesday in late October, and he asked her the way she had told him to ask her. He did not bring flowers. He did not get on a knee. He stood in the kitchen with a cup of coffee in his hand, and she was at the stove with her back to him, and he said, "Nora Lane." Yeah. I cannot imagine waking up one more morning in a house that does not have you in it. She did not turn around. Her shoulders went still. Say it again, Cowboy. I cannot imagine waking up one more morning in a house that does not have you in it. once more. Nora Lane, I cannot wake up in this house one more day without you in it, and I am asking you to stay, not as a hand, not as a partner, as my wife. Now she turned. Her gray eyes were wet, and she did not hide it. Yes, Caleb Rowan. Yes, yes. That's it. What else did you want, Cowboy? A speech? I reckon not. Good. I ain't got one. They were married on the ranch on a Saturday in December, in front of a fire, and 40 people, and Tom Brewster standing up for Caleb and Mary Beth Hollis standing up for Nora, because Mary Beth had asked if she could, and Nora had not been able to speak for a full minute before she had nodded yes. Susanna Price was there. Her grandmother was there. Pete Marston cried again. Henry Brewster caught the bouquet which Nora had not thrown, but which had somehow ended up in his hands anyway, and he married the schoolteacher from Millerton the following spring, though that is another story for another night. The husband Nora had left behind in the other life never did come looking. He died of drink in a boarding house in Missouri the next July, and the news reached Nora through a cousin's letter in August, and she read the letter once, and she put it in the stove, and she watched it burn, and Caleb stood behind her with his hand on her shoulder, and neither of them said a word, because there was no word that needed saying. The ranch prospered. The garden grew. Mary Beth Hollis grew up and went to school in Cheyenne and came back a teacher. Susanna Price grew up and married a good man from Laramie and had 3 daughters of her own, and every one of them knew the name Nora Rowan by the time they could walk. Tom Brewster died on a Tuesday in the spring of the 4th year, peaceful in his own bed, and the deed passed to Caleb and Nora as he had promised, and the Rowan Ranch was theirs. And Caleb Rowan, who had buried his wife and his own heart on the same Wyoming hillside, who had pointed a rifle at a heavy woman on his porch in a blizzard and told her to leave, who had not expected anything good ever to come. Up that long drive again, woke every morning in a house that was warm and full and alive, and beside him every morning was a plus-sized woman with a plain pretty face and gray eyes the color of a storm that had already passed, and he loved her with everything he had left, which turned out to be more than he had ever believed a man like him could have. The West is not a forgiving place. It never was. But it is a place where a broken man can be mended, and where a woman the world has thrown away can build an empire out of a kitchen garden, and where 2 people who walked into each other's lives with nothing between them but a rifle and 40 miles of snow can walk out years later with everything that matters. That is the truth of the Rowan Ranch. That is the truth of Caleb and Nora. And anybody who tells you the world cannot be that kind even once, even to the people it tried hardest to destroy, is a person who never sat on that porch at sunup with a cup of coffee that somebody else had made and watched the light come up over a life they had almost stopped believing in. This is where the story ends. Not with a kiss, not with a wedding, not even with a grave. With a porch and a cup of coffee and 2 people who stayed. That was enough. That was always going to be enough. And it will be enough for the people with eyes to see it for as long as there is a sun that comes up over the American West.